What's up, everybody? It's the Digital World Podcast, and I'm rapid fire news today, so we're gonna go through it because there's a lot to cover. So today, the Fed raised interest rates by 75 basis points, and they're saying that from now forward, they're just gonna look at the data. So it looks like they've reached a neutral point in terms of the interest rates, and who knows how much further they'll go. But there's good news coming out of Amazon, and it rose 12% after the news that it beat expectations for earnings. So take a listen. And you see the clown world today saying we're not in a recession when people know that the technical recession or definition of a recession is two declining quarters of GDP, which we have. There's some confirmation that's come in today that is the case, but they're gonna gaslight people and try to change the definition.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Neil Irwin from Axios. To build a little bit on what Steve was asking, do you believe the United States is currently in a recession? Will the GDP reading tomorrow affect that judgment one way or the other? And has your assessment of the risk of recession changed any in recent weeks?
So, I do not think the U.S. is currently in a recession. And the reason is there are just too many areas of the economy that are performing, too well. And of course, I would point to the labor market in particular. As I mentioned, it's true that growth is slowing, and for reasons that we understand. Really, the growth was extraordinarily high last year, 5.5%. We would have expected growth to slow. There's also more slowing going on now. But if you look at the labor market, you've got growth. I think payroll jobs averaging 450,000 per month. That's a remarkably strong level for this state of affairs. The unemployment rate at near a 50-year low at 3.6%. All of the wage measures that we track are running very strong. So this is a very strong labor market, and it's just not consistent with 2.7 million people hired in the first half of the year. It doesn't make sense that the economy would be in recession with this kind of thing happening. So I don't think the U.S. economy is in recession right now.
And folks, typically, unemployment is at its lowest point, right? During the period where recessions do begin, and it increases. Just look at the GFC. I'll have to pull up a chart and show you guys. Anyways, on to the next thing. Israel is now banning the use of cash for purchases larger than, I guess that's the currency number in that they use. But folks, it's gonna start like that. You cannot use cash for purchases larger than this. Soon it's gonna be like you can't use, and they're gonna keep going down, and it's all gonna be based on using either your credit card or your phone or whatever it may be. World's largest chemical company announces that they're cutting major amounts of ammonia production. And here, Wall Street Silver is saying, if you think food shortages were bad, you haven't seen anything. And this is something I've been honing on since the inception of this channel, basically. Things are getting worse, and it's become far more evident in the last year and a half. And, you see what's happening in the Netherlands with their zero carbon emission goals. Now you see what's happening in Canada. They just reduced 30% of was it nitrogen or the fertilizer, whatever it was. But that's a huge reduction in fertilizers that they'll be needing, that farmers will be needing for their crops, which means less food, which means more starvation, folks. This is an ever increasing problem. Now there's some news coming out that America First Legal is, I guess, obtained emails between the CDC director of digital media, Carl Crawford, and Twitter execs on how to suppress free speech. And here are all the legal documents. So if you want to find out more, go and follow Mary Belden. And this is her, I forget what it's called. But that's how you can find her exact profile, MD Breathe. Okay? Now, this is going to be interesting how it all unfolds. But, folks, truth does come out. It's just a matter of time. And people who are fighting and standing up will be vindicated. They will be at some point. Who knows how long it's gonna be, but it will take place. There's another check this out. So there's a $433 billion Inflation Reduction Act that's going through Congress right now. And George Gammon tweeted this out. He says, Ron Paul said it so well. When you look at the name of a government act, the outcome will be the exact opposite. Folks, if you're going to spend this much money, it's clearly not going to reduce inflation. We saw what the CARES Act did. You think the inflation we're experiencing now just happened out of nowhere? Those stimmy checks ended up costing you a lot of money, didn't they? Here is in the Philippines, people are protesting against high gas prices, and so this is worldwide, folks. They're taking people towards a very scary place. Less food, less energy. You own nothing, and you'll be happy. That's their mantra. Here is heavy rains in the UAE. I mean, it's usually pretty dry in certain areas, and if you get floods like this, it's disastrous because people are just not accustomed to this, right? And in the dry climate, when you get water like this, it just sweeps by, and if their infrastructure isn't used to weather like this, it's just gonna destroy it. So here, apparently, in the U.S. House of Democrats, they plan to announce a proposal next month to ban lawmakers, their spouses, and senior staff from trading stocks. Here, BCB said, I still can't imagine them doing something like this at a bottom. I imagine it happening at a top where they sell super high, just like the Fed officials did. So the Fed presidents sold all their stock for ethical reasons when the S&P 500 nailed the 4.2316 Fibonacci extension. And this, if they pass it, it's going to be at a time when markets are at all-time highs. For myself, I've told myself, whenever this passes and Congress or lawmakers can no longer trade stocks, run for the hills, that is a very clear indication we're probably at the top of the markets. So take that as you wish. And this is just a little reminder, folks. Holocaust was legal. Doesn't mean it was lawful, but it was legal. But people who hid Jews were criminals. Slavery was legal. People who freed slaves were criminals. Segregation was legal. People who stood up for equality were criminals. Governments and laws are not always a guide for human decency and morality, and that's why you have to know and stand by your principles. And this is something you gotta be very, very specific and very diligent in knowing what it is you believe in. And it's something I try to work on every day. It just takes a little bit at a time. A little bit at a time. So I leave you with all this news, folks. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe to the channel. It's the Digital World Podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.